I finally made it back to my hometown in Shandong from the US. Behind me is the Jinan West Railway Station. Now that Trump has started deporting large numbers of undocumented immigrants, New York has already taken the first steps. New York has stopped giving out benefits like cash vouchers and food stamps to undocumented immigrants. I'm guessing Los Angeles will be next. Right now, LA and New York are the two cities with the largest populations of undocumented immigrants. I feel like the good days for undocumented immigrants are coming to an end, and this trend is unstoppable. If you're undocumented in the US, it's time to start planning your next move. Figure out your next destination because staying in the US will only buy you a little more time, maybe 1 or 2 months at most, but you can't drag it out for much longer. US President-elect Donald Trump announced on November 8th that his first major action as president will be launching what he called the, quote, largest deportation campaign in history. His initial focus will be on Chinese men of military age living illegally in the U.S., particularly those suspected of being Chinese military personnel who enter the country unlawfully. Because China often refuses to take back deported refugees, the U.S. may send those individuals to third countries, such as Guatemala. Trump stated,
"In the last year alone, over 70,000 illegal aliens from China have crossed our border. You know about that. Many of them military-aged men, 70,000 in a year. 70,000, that's getting to be Army territory."
The man in the first video we showed is suspected to be an illegal immigrant fitting this profile. After returning to China, the man appeared to signal to others still in the U.S., showing he was well-informed and quick to act. On the same day, Todd Bensman, a senior national security fellow at the Center for Immigration Studies, spoke at a think tank seminar. He said he believes the Chinese military has likely sent personnel into the U.S. through illegal immigration. At the seminar held by the Committee on the Present Danger, China, Bensman explained that large number of Chinese nationals began crossing the U.S. border in May. Over the past 15 months, around 50,000 Chinese individuals have entered the U.S. this way. Since then, the number has surged, with nearly 80,000 crossing to date. He noted that these individuals are mostly single adults. Benson stated that if he were the Chinese Communist Party, he would view the situation as an exceptional opportunity, describing it as a golden chance for intelligence operatives. He clarified that no Chinese intelligence agents have been caught entering the U.S. this way so far, but tracking them takes time. He emphasized that these people are trained, which makes them hard to catch. He also pointed out that these individuals are not looking for traditional labor jobs. Chinese migrants crossing through the Darien Gap are often well-equipped, carry significant cash, and present themselves with polished appearance, including stylish clothing and hairstyles. Many avoid speaking and appear highly disciplined. While most Chinese migrants likely come to the U.S. seeking better opportunities, Bensman believes the Chinese military has sent a significant number of both male and female soldiers. He warned that the Chinese government has been actively conducting espionage against the United States for years. He explained that they exploit legal visa programs, such as student and scholar visas, and study weak points in the U.S. screening process to infiltrate research institutions and universities. These agents focus on stealing advanced technologies and dual-use defense research to pass on to the Chinese government. Director Su Tzu-yun at Taiwan's Institute for National Defense and Security Research noted, "The large-scale movement of tens of thousands of illegal immigrants is not just a public safety issue, it is a potential intelligence and security threat, with individuals from the CCP's Ministry of State Security or intelligence units likely embedded within these groups." Previously, reports revealed that 3 Chinese nationals were sentenced for trespassing on U.S. military bases. Research fellow Shansong Kun at Taiwan's Institute for National Defense and Security Research stated, "These Chinese soldiers entering the United States are likely tasked with gathering intelligence on American military and technological developments. They might also be working to expand their secret police operations or infiltrate various organizations within American society." Commentator Lan Shu highlighted the presence of suspected Chinese operatives during Xi Jinping's visit to San Francisco for the APEC summit in November. He observed, "During that time, we saw many individuals physically attacking Chinese dissidents protesting against Xi Jinping. Many of these attackers were young men from China, and as far as I understand, a significant number of them did not hold legitimate legal status in the United States." On November 18th, the Department of Homeland Security announced that Immigration and Customs Enforcement had conducted its third large-scale deportation of undocumented Chinese nationals in less than 6 months. The latest deportation occurred on November 16, but the number of individuals deported was not disclosed. The department said the operation highlights efforts to combat human smuggling networks in partnership with international allies. The department emphasized, "We will continue to enforce our immigration laws and remove individuals without a legal basis to remain in the United States. People should not believe the lies of smugglers." In response to Trump's policy of mass deportations targeting Chinese men of military age, the Chinese government-aligned China Press launched a counter-narrative. It quoted an ABC report claiming the Trump administration plans to use military resources to assist with the deportation efforts. The article also described Trump's statement at a rally in New York's Madison Square Garden, where he said, "I'll rescue every city and town that has been invaded and conquered, and we'll put these vicious and bloodthirsty criminals in jail, then kick them the hell out of our country as fast as possible." China Press suggested that during his campaign, Trump mentioned a number of times about using the National Guard to help with the deportations and proposed redeploying thousands of U.S. troops from overseas to the U.S.-Mexico border. The report speculated that such a plan would mark a major shift in U.S. military's role, as it typically avoids domestic law enforcement. It also cited estimates that deporting the approximately 11 million undocumented immigrants in the U.S. could cost billions of dollars annually. The report warned that mass deportations could lead to labor shortages and tax revenue losses. The China Press also claimed that Manuel Cunha, president of the Nisei Farmers League, stated in an interview that losing immigrant labor would have catastrophic consequences for U.S. agriculture. According to the report, Cunha said, quote, "If you take away my workforce, Americans won't be able to eat. The food system will collapse, and it would be devastating for the entire country." The sources and content in the Chinese language report from China Press has yet to be verified, which is aligned with the Chinese government narratives. A critical question remains whether China Press is officially registered in the U.S. as a foreign agent. Beyond concerns about military operatives and foreign agents, recent reports of large-scale cyber attacks targeting U.S. telecommunications companies have drawn significant attention. Senator Mark Warner, chair of the Senate Intelligence Committee, recently stated that Chinese government espionage has infiltrated more than a dozen U.S. telecom firms. He described it as, quote, "the worst telecom hack in our nation's history by far." Warner recently explained in an interview with the Washington Post that the hackers targeting U.S. telecom companies belong to a group called the Salt Typhoon. These hackers can listen to audio calls in real time and sometimes move between networks by exploiting trusted connections. Warner noted that these hackers are still embedded in U.S. networks. Removing them would likely require replacing large amounts of outdated equipment nationwide, including old routers and switches. Earlier this month, U.S. authorities revealed that hackers linked to China had breached several telecom companies. These intrusions allowed them to intercept surveillance data used by American law enforcement. On November 13th, the FBI and the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency issued a joint statement confirming that hackers had accessed multiple U.S. telecom networks. They stole call records, disrupted private communications, and targeted individuals involved in government or political activities. The hackers also copied sensitive information submitted by law enforcement to obtain court orders. Warner highlighted the scale of the breach, noting that while fewer than 150 individuals, mostly in Washington, D.C., were directly affected, millions of phone and text message records connected to others were compromised. He warned, "That number could go up dramatically." Warner emphasized that the Chinese Communist Party is actively working to infiltrate telecom systems worldwide to steal vast amounts of data. He described the situation as severe and urged Americans to understand the scale of the threat. Comparing the Salt Typhoon attacks to previous Russian-linked cyber attacks, like those on Colonial Pipeline and Solar Winds, Warner said that those incidents look like child's play. After his re-election on November 6, Donald Trump quickly announced a series of policies targeting the CCP. His administration made it clear that the CCP is considered the primary adversary. Trump also began efforts to dismantle the alliance between China and Russia. He sees ending the Russia-Ukraine war as a key step in breaking that partnership. Political analysts say that this is a significant challenge for the CCP, which relies on such alliances to expand its influence globally. Political commentator Lan Shu believes that ending the Russia-Ukraine war is Trump's first step in addressing global conflicts. He also argued that this would benefit Ukraine, saying, quote, "Victory on the battlefield requires sufficient troops, but Ukraine no longer has enough. They've reached the point of conscripting men off the streets." He contrasted this with Russia, which has received large numbers of trained active duty soldiers from North Korea. Lan added that the prolonged conflict has become a war of attrition, draining U.S. resources, military stockpiles, and taxpayer funds. He said, quote, "The Ukraine war is unsustainable in the long term and needs an urgent resolution." According to Lan, Trump's strategy is to focus all efforts on countering the CCP, with the first step being to end the Russia-Ukraine conflict. On November 6, the day of Trump's re-election, Russian President Vladimir Putin stated he had not called to congratulate Trump. However, he later praised Trump's actions during the assassination attempt, calling him a real man. Sources indicate that the two leaders spoke privately soon afterward. Putin's reasoning was that, given the adversarial relationship between the US and Russia in the Ukraine conflict, a formal congratulatory call as a head of state was inappropriate. However, during their private conversation, they reportedly reached an understanding to avoid escalating the war and agreed to seek opportunities to end the conflict. This may explain why, after the current US administration suddenly authorized Ukraine to use US missiles to strike Russian territory, Putin's response was relatively restrained. When Ukraine launched 6 long-range missiles targeting Russia, Russia retaliated with a single medium-range hypersonic missile. Notably, Russia informed the US government 30 minutes before the launch. Despite this warning, US deployed air defense systems in Ukraine were unable to intercept the missile. Observers believe Putin is waiting for Trump to take office in January to fulfill their agreement and negotiate an end to the war. Meanwhile, reports emerged that Chinese mercenaries in the Russia-Ukraine war have been allowed to terminate their contracts. One well-known figure, Jinan West, posted a video saying he is returning home. Today is November 16th. A few days ago, the Russian side told me that my paperwork should have been completed quickly, but since they escalated my case to Moscow for processing, they decided to handle all expired contracts at once. Now, they're telling me today that they lost my file. They even said they thought I was dead. I have no idea what's going on over there. I spent the entire afternoon yelling at them. I told them that no matter what, I need to get back to the rear tomorrow. After getting my travel pass, I still need to go to 4 different places to complete all the paperwork and gather all the documents. Then I have to go to Moscow. 4 cities in total. Isn't this just a complete hassle? Along with another individual known as Warden, whose real name is Wang Wei, Jinan West is believed to be a Chinese military operative sent to Russia to gather intelligence. The Chinese military, lacking real combat experience, reportedly deployed these operatives to collect valuable battlefield information as part of their preparations for potential actions against Taiwan. These operatives likely had an agreement with Russian forces to avoid being assigned to the most dangerous combat zones. This arrangement allowed them to stay relatively safe while gaining access to critical information. Recent developments suggest Li may have learned about growing tensions between China and Russia. He likely anticipated sudden changes on the battlefield, prompting him to attempt a quiet exit. Surprisingly, the Russian military has allowed all Chinese mercenaries to end their contracts and leave. Li also discovered that his personal records had already been discarded, effectively marking him as someone presumed dead and unable to return. Reports suggest that after transmitting battlefield intelligence back to China, the CCP no longer saw a need for Li to return alive. If he and other surviving mercenaries do make it back to China, their presence could create significant concerns for the CCP. After Trump's re-election, his administration prepared for the dismantling of the China-Russia alliance. Early signs of these efforts are already visible in the Russia-Ukraine war. Meanwhile, the U.S. military has begun countering the CCP directly in the South China Sea. On November 19th, U.S. Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin visited the Philippines for 2 days. During the visit, Austin announced that the U.S. had provided the Philippine Navy with an undisclosed number of unmanned surface vessels, or USVs. These vessels are designed to enhance operations in the West Philippine Sea and counter China's provocations in the region. A report from the South China Morning Post on November 21st highlighted expert opinions on the USVs. Analysts believe these advanced vessels will act as, quote, force multipliers for the Philippine Navy. They are expected to improve surveillance and operational capabilities while avoiding further escalation of tensions in the South China Sea. At a joint press conference on November 19th, the Philippine Navy showcased a video demonstrating the capabilities of a USV manufactured by Martac, known as a Mantis T-12. The T-12 measures 3.6 meters in length and has a payload capacity of 64 kilograms. It is one of Martac's most popular models. The vessel is designed for a variety of missions, including mine detection, surveillance, search and rescue operations, electronic warfare, and swarm tactics. Experts suggest that the Mantis T-12 could be used for stealth reconnaissance, resupplying the BRP Sierra Madre, or even modified for combat purposes. Aaron Matthew Lariosa, a defense journalist, called the T-12 a, quote, force multiplier for the Philippine Navy. He explained that these USVs can support a range of missions, including surveillance, as noted by former Navy Commander Rear Admiral Toribio Adasi Jr. Matthew Lariosa emphasized that the maritime awareness mission is crucial for Philippine forces in the West Philippine Sea as it enhances their ability to monitor Chinese forces. He added that the unmanned surface vessels could also help the Philippines counterbalance the CCP's forces asymmetrically, similar to how Ukraine's navy operates in the Black Sea or how the Houthi rebels conduct operations in the Red Sea. Reports have long suggested that a significant portion of Houthi weapons are manufactured in China, and thus the U.S. government is aware that the CCP is likely the primary supporter behind the Houthis. The Houthis have used asymmetric warfare to significantly drain the resources of Western coalition forces. It now appears that the U.S. military has adopted a similar approach, using the same tactics against the CCP. Meanwhile, Chinese operatives sent to the U.S., referred to as irregular military personnel, are reportedly fleeing back to China. Additionally, Chinese cannon fodder from the Russia-Ukraine battlefield may also return alive, outcomes the CCP likely hope to avoid. At the same time, the U.S. military has launched direct counteractions against the CCP in the South China Sea. The stage is now set for what could be the final showdown between the U.S. and the CCP.